Quick Debug is a public workspace that notifies developers when an API test fails. It can also suggest relevant links from Stack Overflow based on the error message received. Before I explain what the collection does in detail, let me show you what happens when I run the collection. So when I run the collection, the first API test fails with a status code of 500. It then passes that error message down to the Stack Exchange API, which returns a list of links based on the error message and sends that message over to Slack. So if I check Slack, I should see that we have an error message that contains a stack, the affected endpoint, the status code, and a list of relevant links from Stack Overflow. So let's say, for example, this message seems a bit confusing to me. What I can do is check one of these links to get a better understanding of the message. So back to the workspace. In this workspace, we have two collections: an environment variable, a mock server, and a monitor. The first collection is responsible for getting the error message, sending it over to Stack Overflow, and sending the message over to Slack. In the first request, we have a test endpoint. In this request, we also have a test script. This test script gets the error message from the endpoint and saves it in an environment variable. In the second request, we have the Stack Exchange API. This API takes in params such as the error message, the site, and the tags. In this request, we also have a pre-request script which gets the error message from the environment variable and parses it to obtain information that we're going to display later on in the Slack message. In the test script, we have some code that generates the code that is needed to be displayed in the Slack message. In the next request, we have a Slack webhook. This webhook sends out a body to Slack so that it can be displayed as a message. We also have a test script. This test script is responsible for unsetting all the environment variables and checking if we have another endpoint to test. So here I have a simple Node.js and Express server. We have a simple endpoint over here that has a try-catch block. If an error occurs, the error is serialized and it's sent to the client with a status code of 500. Now, this is meant to be used on a dev environment. On a production server, you would have to send a custom message to the client, as sending the error would leak some important information from the server. So this is just meant to be used during the development process as you are testing your API. So now here I have an example of an error. So let's say, for example, I have this variable student. So student does not have a name, but when I try to access the name over here, it's going to throw an error because student does not have a name. So let's test that in Postman. So if I go on the test, so this test API is connected to this server. If I run this, we should get an error with a body with an error. So this JSON object is returned by this API over here. In the workspace, we also have another collection called error response examples. This collection has 3 requests that use a mock server API to simulate an error response. So if I run one of these examples, I should get an error message similar to the one we got from the server. This error message will have a name, a message, and a stack. So if you currently don't have an API to test and you want to see how the system works, you can simply copy this and paste it in the quick debug workspace, and you should get the same error message in Slack. I also have a monitor that can be set to run the quick debug collection in intervals. So this will help automate the whole process. So if you're away from your computer, you can receive a notification on your Slack app, or you can receive a notification on your desktop. This collection can also be used to test more than one endpoint. So for example, I have 3 endpoints here, and each of these test requests uses the mock server API. So if I run this collection, we should see that it's going to test all the APIs one by one. And we receive a Slack notification for each test. So if I open this, as you can see here, we have one had cannot read property length. Another one had a type error. This state is not a function. The other one had a property name error.